Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. Cephalus is an old man, right? And Socrates is talking with him back and forth, and he says, hey, I've got this question for you. Before he asks about what justice is, he says, you're pretty rich. You're well off. Look around, nice house. You can put on dinner parties and things like that. Is that why you're so happy? And Cephalus says, well, that's a good question. A lot of people would say, yeah, I'm happy because I'm wealthy. He asks them a few other questions, like where did your money come from? How did you get it? Bless you. Did you start out rich? And those are relevant too, but the big question is, will money make you happy? Money is a good thing, isn't it? What happens if you don't have money? You're trying to get it. Why are you trying to get it?
We need it.
Okay, you need it, yeah. For what? You don't need it to get somebody to love you, do you? And that's nice. But, love won't handle everything, will it? What do you need it for? I look around the rooms, but everything you've got, I think you've purchased at one time or another, right? All these desks are purchased, this blackboard was purchased. No money, none of this nice stuff. Of course, that's not enough to make you happy by itself, is it? Having a backpack and shoes, and money about your haircuts too, or whatever other things you've done with your body to make it the way you want. What else do you need money for?
House, car.
Oh, those are pretty important, aren't they? Especially, in our society, you can live out of doors. You can live without a car and a house. And I don't just mean renting or something like that. I mean, like being a street person. But that's not a very nice life, is it? There are some people who take on that life voluntarily, but most people who are in that situation, it's not voluntary. Cephalus is an old man, and he's actually talking about when you get older. It's nice to have money then, too, isn't it? If you don't have money, if you didn't put away, in our society, if you didn't put away for retirement, what happens to you when you get old? It's pretty tough, isn't it? If you have family and they'll take you in, then you might be okay. If not, you're going to have to find out how to make food really cheap and find a place to live, and hope that, I always get Medicaid and Medicare mixed up. Which is the one for impoverished people? Medicaid or Medicare?
Medicare is for the older,
Medicaid then.
is for people who are
Low income.
right.
Yeah. Medicaid, it's not a lot of fun going to a doctor who has to file Medicaid claims, and you may not get good medical care because of it. Can't travel, can't go where you want to, unless somebody else provides these things. So wealth does seem to be pretty important. Will wealth make you happy by itself? So why not?
Because you need other things.
Like what?
Besides that. People that you care about.
Here's an interesting thought experiment to think about. Think about the people that you care about, and there's probably more than one, right? I hope, for all of you. Now, think about a big amount of money. Let's make it $10 million, because $1 million won't go that far these days, right? Let's make it $10 million. And I'm not going to like say you can't see any of the people that you care about, but for any one of those people that you really do genuinely care about, let's say right now I could make you a cash offer and say, I will give you $10 million if you will, from this point on, have nothing to do with that person ever again. That would be a tough dilemma, I think, for a lot of people, because those are genuine goods. I'm not saying that all of you, because you're hesitating, you're a bad person, or you don't value your friends highly. That is something that actually should be a tough dilemma, because $10 million can buy an awful lot of good things, but the relationship with the person that you care about is also a primary good, something that makes you happy, that's fulfilling. Maybe the money couldn't satisfy that. Maybe, Now the money could help you with that if you want to take your friend out for dinner or for coffee, and you go up to the counter to pay, and you say, I don't have any money. They say, well, we don't have any food for you. We don't have any coffee for you. Get out of here. Go somewhere else. You want to take your friend to a concert. That requires money too, right? There's a lot of things that require money, but those things themselves tend to be goods that go beyond mere wealth. One of those goods that Cephalus is interested in is good character. And he says something really interesting. He says, when you get older, you need both of these in order to be happy. You need wealth, in part because you won't be happy without wealth. If you're poor, old age is going to be tough. But you also need good character. Why? Well, let's think about this. This is going a little bit beyond what he talks about, but are there ways to screw up your life with money?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, those of us that are older have a lot more experience
Yeah.
with this sort of thing. What are the ways that you can think of right off the bat? Yeah.
Drugs.
Yeah, you could, drugs can be very, very expensive habit the more that you get into them. Especially if you start getting into debt to people. That's a pretty self-destructive way.
Well, debt in itself,
Oh, debt, yeah.
can be destructive.
Not managing one's money well to stay within one's means and then going further and further into debt. The debt starts to take on a life of its own, right? Some of you may have experienced this with things like credit cards or car loans or things along those lines at this point. It's not hard to wind up, in $10,000, $20,000, $100,000 worth of debt through just mismanaging a few things over the period of a year or 2 years. I imagine that a lot of you have student loans too, right? And student loan debt can, if let's say you say, I'm just not going to repay that. That will have repercussions, right? A lot more nowadays. They have a lot more rules about that for you than they did for my parents' generation. My generation, we're kind of, in the middle with that. What are other ways people script their lives with money? Let's say you don't go into debt, you don't get hooked on drugs. Is everything A-okay then?
Investment.
So you come out with nothing, maybe. And then all you've done is diminish the money that you had. I'm thinking more about ways in which people make their lives worse, though, yeah.
I think that sometimes not valuing what you have sometimes can encourage bad character. For example, I don't see the little people because
because you have money, yeah.
I have money, so what do I, what does it matter that they don't have money? I have money.
Yeah, that's an interesting
your
one.
character sort of starts to.
If you have money, there are certain situations where you can walk into and you automatically have power over people, and if you use that power badly, it can start to affect your character, and it'll do it over time. Think about, have any of you ever worked in retail industries, or been servers, or restaurants? A few of you. You have any horror stories about awful patrons? Do all of you have horror stories about awful patrons? Yeah, you know why? Because there's some people exactly what you're describing who walk in, and because they have money, and because that person is there to serve them, they, say, I'm going to do whatever I want, and you better, give in to me. That's a way to develop bad character, not good character. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was thinking like the Paris Hiltons of the world, where they just have money and they're like living.
Oh yeah.
But not even just that, but people who had nothing and made their way sort of forget where they came from, because now they have this wealth, this affluence, and they don't remember that they were from the Bronx, that they didn't always live in Westchester.
Okay, that's a good example too. Socrates says something to Cephalus that's really interesting. He said, when he's asking, did you make your own money? And he says, those who make their own money, they almost treat it as if it's like their children. They love it even more than those who just inherited it, because it's part of who they are. And maybe that's a mistake. Somebody else had their hand up over here. What about your purchasing decisions? Could you buy a whole bunch of crazy stuff that's not going to be good for you? Can you use money to? We talked about drugs. That would definitely fit that case. What if you spend all your money on CDs and you never use it on anything else? Nowadays nobody would do that. It'd be MP3s, right? But I had friends who would have 4,000 CDs, and you'd walk in and you'd be like, "This is your whole set of possessions, right? This is why your car is broken down, and why you never have any money for anything. When are you going to play all 4,000 of these? I just like to have them," they would say. Yeah.
Well, I ever see Lamar Odom? He makes it show his contract with Republic Lakers, and they showed he supports 40 to 60 group of friends.
Yeah.
In some ghetto complex, but he pays their rent, pays for everything.
Okay.
And you're selling one of whatever Kardashians did, you can't be paying for 40 to 50 people's rent a month.
Well, that's interesting, because we would look at that on one way as a good action, right? Because he's taking care of somebody else. On the other hand, if you just give somebody money, we see this a lot with kids of rich people, right? Just give them money, no strings attached, so long as they kiss up to you or something like that every once in a while. Oftentimes that ruins their character, doesn't it? Makes them dependent, they don't want to work for themselves.
But he was saying that the thing is but every single one of those people, it's it's either my friend or my family, can't let them not live that.
So he feels if he doesn't do it, he's a bad person. That's interesting.
Yeah, but he's losing all his wealth doing it today,
Yeah, one second. When we look at Aristotle, he's going to say, how much wealth do you actually need? And he actually thinks that you need enough for your family, not just for you, but also for those who are dependent on you. He had his hand up first. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't want to sound like that guy, but every summer, since I've been growing up, my mom would always just leave me money before she left for work.
Yeah.
And even till this day, she's most, I love her to death. And I always feel bad. She was you're working all summer, I want you to save that money, take what I leave for you. And
Yeah.
she would gas, food, everything, every day. I would never, I always was I can't, not right there for my mom.
Yeah.
Years old, and she would always insist, even going out bars at night. She's hey,
Have a 20 here.
Buy a couple of drinks. Come on.
Enjoy it while you
That's
can.
interesting,
The goal is
because-
stop soon.
Again, it's one of those things where, on the one hand, it seems like a good action because it's generous, right?
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's not prudent. It's not taking care of her own needs, right? She had her hand up. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say something about what he said, and also when you give people money like that, it almost makes them not want to work for anything for themselves, because you're almost just giving them everything, and they feel like they don't have to work for anything, so they kind of just sit around and maybe take it. Not all people, but
Yeah, I mean, that is a risk, certainly, that comes up. And I've seen it, I think all of you have seen it as well, yeah.
I find that interesting for several different reasons. One is, how are you gonna feel when that stops? You know, it's gonna be a weird feeling for you. But it's coming, so get ready. But the other thing is this. I work in a group home where kids that have been in my program have been, for lack of a better term, institutionalized.
Sure.
Because they've been in the system for so long. And what ends up happening is because they have been catered to their every need by the system. They buy their clothes, they give them the food, they provide their shelter, everything.
Yeah.
As they get older, they start to develop this sense of entitlement. You owe this to me.
Yeah.
So if you stop, we're gonna have a problem because you owe it to me to make sure that I have a coat. Even though I gave my coat to my friend because I felt like it.
Yeah.
So you gotta get me another one. If you don't, I'm gonna rip the place up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a problem. So, sort of just to recap here, what Cephalus is saying, and Socrates seems to be endorsing this too, is these are both needed, and they kind of reinforce each other. It's not enough just to have wealth. Wealth is not a bad thing, but it's not enough to have wealth. You actually need some sort of good character to structure what you do with your wealth, to structure how you manage it. It's not just a matter either too of like, is it going to make you richer to be a good person? Maybe, maybe not. What you actually have and what you do with it is going to depend very much on your character.